Hey folks, it's John from A is for Alcoholic again. Today's conversation is with Tiffany. It was really great to talk with her. I found her on Instagram at Only Forward Progress. I highly suggest you go check it out. We talked about getting sober, recovery, spirituality, physical fitness, the importance of doing your squats every day, and running. It was so great. Her energy, her excitement. It was all really inspiring and motivating. I hope you enjoy the conversation with Tiffany. Where did you first come in contact with alcohol? How early, not just maybe even your first imbibing, but was it something that you grew up with as a kid?
Yeah, I thought about that a lot because I grew up, my mom always had like that one bottle of Grand Marnier like on the hutch in the dining room that like was more of like a decoration piece than anything else, like it was just that thing that we all knew was there. So I really don't remember alcohol much. I still to this day, I'm 36 years old. I can count on one hand the amount of times I've seen my father drink alcohol, which was 3 times. So, it just was not, it wasn't a part of our life. It wasn't a part of our family. I hadn't really been exposed to many problems with it. But my first real exposure was I was over just a friend's house in like, I want to say like seventh grade probably. And her brothers were older. They were all in high school and they were like juniors and seniors in high school and they were drinking Budweiser.
Mm-hmm.
So I had my first beer was a Budweiser. Like it's so disappointing. Um, but so that was how it all started was, just hanging out with those kids who had older brothers and sisters. And then, you go to parties and it's just more
Mm-hmm.
prevalent,
Mm-hmm.
just your very typical suburb high school experience, like,
So no
eh,
no real drama in high school around alcohol? No, were there any heavy ramifications, or did you come in was there any legal ramifications?
yeah, I mean, my drinking, it really had a lot of like ebbs and flows, like I say it was tidal. So there were times it would ramp up real high, and then I'd be drinking a ton, and like my friends and I, we used to split handles of Captain Morgan, and you've got your 2 liter of Coke, you've got your handle of Captains, and you're just slugging them back, like so yeah, there was a lot of trouble. There were nights I was dropped off in my driveway.
Mm,
It really the worst the worst high school experience I can honestly remember was my 18th birthday. My best friend and I, our birthdays are like 3 days apart. We got a liter of pop off 100 proof vodka. We hiked to the top of this mountain that overlooked this private school in our town. I grew up in Connecticut, and we just sat up there hanging out, and drank the whole thing and didn't think anything of it while we're at the top of this mountain. But as we started to hike down, we realized like we were drunk and we could barely make it down. We fell
mm,
12, 13, 14 times. It was atrocious. I was too sick to drive by the time I got down to the car. I was vomiting. He was too sick to drive. We had, at least the smarts at that point to call for help. So we called some friends, and I had a manual transmission, so no one could drive my car. So we had to wait for my friend's sister to get out of work, so she could come.
mm-hmm,
Anyway, they dropped me off in my driveway, and this is I think when I knew that my relationship with alcohol was different. Was this day, and I got dropped off in my driveway, and my friend was smart enough to leave me like with the seatbelt like propped out the car door with the door open just in case I threw up. Called my house. She thought it was my sister that answered, but it was my mother. And she's like, oh, like Tiffany's out in the driveway. Like she's super drunk. Don't worry, she didn't drive. Like she's home, but like, can you come get her before your mom finds her? Meanwhile, my mother's on the phone. So my mom comes out, helps me into the house, puts me to bed on the bathroom floor, pillow, blanket, glass of water, Advil, like we'll deal with this tomorrow, you know. And I'll never forget, she wakes me up by, you know, kicking my feet, and she's like, how you feel? You good? You're going to school today? Like, I was dead hungover. And my punishment was having to go to school. It was horrible. So, but yeah, that's when I realized I was like, all right, I'm different than everyone else. I don't stop. You know, like I drink until I physically am just not able to anymore.
Yeah.
And that was 18.
Yeah. I wish so much that I would have had more of that epiphany, or at least it just, I don't think a lot of people, well, I know myself, I did it for like 17 years. I drank for like 17 years before it finally said, oh, there's a problem here. It was always seen as this was just something to overcome. This is just a challenge. This is just the way life is. I accepted it for what it was, and I accepted all the pain and all the suffering. So you say you're 36 now and you were 18 then. How long did you drink before you got sober?
Yeah, so my sobriety date is July 15th, 2018. So I'm 31 months.
Okay.
And
Congratulations.
you know, thank you. Yeah, it's been quite the journey. You know, for me, I had, let's see, when was it? It was like back in like 2013. I was in a relationship, and a lot of stuff had happened. I had been through some major life transitions, and I moved. I'm a licensed captain, so I used to sail a lot. And so I took a contract on a boat, and I was sailing from Maine to the Caribbean, and I was just going from a very chaotic lifestyle where there was a lot of partying. And like when you're in the Caribbean, have you ever been?
I have not. No, not yet.
So they have like full moon parties that are just, I mean, it's just whatever you want is available, you know. So it was just a very active nightlife. At the time, I wasn't operating as a captain, so I had a lot more freedom. I was just a crew member, so I could go to shore at night, and that's when things starting to like really ramp up, was like getting into that kind of like scene, I guess. And you know, when you're at a marina or you're near boat people, there's always rum, there's always vodka, you know. So the stereotype is real with the rum, you know, especially in the Caribbean. There's these drinks called painkillers, and
I'm familiar. Yes.
Yeah, right. Okay. So, you know, it's just, anyway, so I had just transitioned out of all of that, and I was like, okay, like back in Baltimore, like I'm gonna finally get my stuff together. And you know, and I ended up in this relationship. I landed a really good job, and I had an apartment, and I was feeling pretty good. Like life was on the up and up, but I was still drinking a lot. I was drinking every day. I would get those big bottles of wine. What are they, like the 750s, you know, like, and they would last a day, you know. And it was, you know, I didn't think anything of it really at the time, but as that relationship was ending, I heard him on the phone with his mother, and this was the, like, you know, the oh shit moment, like for me, was I heard him say to his mother, you know, part of the reason he was breaking up with me, he goes, you know, Mom, Tip's an alcoholic. And I was like, I was in the kitchen, and he was like out on like it was one of those little apartments. You have like the sliding glass door and like a little concrete patio, you know, and the kitchen window was kind of adjacent to that. So I heard him say that, and I was like, he just called me an alcoholic. Like at first I was like super pissed, you know, and then I was like, all right, well, that's an honest conversation with his mother. Like, let me look in the mirror for a minute, you know. And that hurt, you know, it really hurt, but I needed to hear it. I needed, you know, I had no witnesses to what I was doing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Do you think there's something to now I don't know a lot of people who work, I don't know how you would say it, work on boats, work with boats. When I lived in Seattle, we were one of the ports where you're probably familiar with that show Deadliest Catch.
Yeah.
So these guys, when they would come to Seattle, they would come and party at a bar that was right next to mine, the one that I worked at. And I have never seen, I mean, we're talking thousands of dollars in cash in their pockets. Like they would walk in with $10,000 and $20,000 worth of cash in their pocket. And
Mhm.
I wouldn't, if you were there on the right night, you never had to buy a drink. They were
Yep.
constantly buying rounds.
Yep.
And I wonder if there's something about working on a boat, whether it be with a small crew or on your own, that there's a level of isolation that some people don't always experience otherwise. I don't know if I'm speculating here.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's a couple real components to that. So, as far as the isolation thing, I mean, think about it, especially in like in the fishing industry. It's an industry I would love to break into, but I'm a female and it's extremely tough. There's a couple lobster women up in Maine, and there's a couple, but it's extremely tough to get into because the work is no joke. I
Hmm.
mean, you could die literally at any second if you're not careful on those things. Um, so there's an added risk of just life. The boat could sink. Ideally it won't, but it could at any moment for any reason because of what they sail through and what they're willing to go through. I'm being dramatic about it, but I'm trying to bring the point
Hmm.
home is like, there's a lot of trauma that goes into it. Like I um I had a traumatic event happen to me. It's something that I'm still healing from, and so it's kind of hard to talk about. But I was on a schooner off the coast of New Zealand. We got into a Category 3 hurricane. Barely made it through it. We're all 11 of us are lucky to be alive today. I still have issues when storms come through. Like even though I'm like firm on solid ground today, like if it's windy and the wind's howling and I have a metal roof on my house, so when I get a good windstorm, my anxiety is like it's horrible. So anyway, that's a whole nother part of the story. But
Hmm.
so you deal with factors and forces that are beyond under like a normal person's comprehension. So when you get to shore and you want to let loose and you've got all this cash, like the money thing is real. They make a ton of money if they have a good season, or they don't make anything. So you have these ebbs and flows of money and you just want to feel generous. You just survived this fishing season. And like on the flip side of that, in the charter industry, which is what I was in, we did like luxury vacations for people. And you get like we would get tipped out anywhere between just tipped out, not even your base pay, anywhere between 1,200 and $3,000 a week.
Wow.
So like
Yeah.
you just got like cash coming in, and you're like you've got a night off, one night, and you go out, you go hard.
Yeah.
So there's a
Yeah.
lot of truth to it.
Okay.
you know
So that's just interesting to me because it's something that I noticed with that particular, I don't want to say just
yeah,
that profession, but in that general area. So
yeah,
2013, you're in this relationship, you overhear
yeah,
this conversation, and this is the first reckoning as far
yeah,
as the
yeah. It
beginning
was
of a
like the first.
bottom.
Yeah, it was I had a soft bottom. That's what I like to call it. I didn't have like a major, like I didn't get arrested, I didn't get a DUI. I was very fortunate, but I had a lot of emotional hits. So I was coming out of that relationship. This guy's telling his mom I'm an alcoholic, and that's one of the reasons. And I'm like, but if I think back to my social circle and my sailing buddies and how my life has been the last 10 years, like I really don't drink that much. I was like, who the heck is he to compare? Like what is his basis of comparison?
Hmm.
And so I took, I kind of, I'm a Gemini, so one side of me heard it and the other side of me was like, nah. So then I get into another relationship, and this guy had just been through some personal traumas, and his wife had commit suicide, and I realize now I was a rebound. But during that time we were both drinking really heavily together. I had a drinking buddy all of a sudden. Like
Hmm.
I had that. I didn't have to hide. There was this guy coming home wanting to have scotch and beers and bourbon, and like we got to try all these different bourbons. And I didn't have to hide anymore, so that kind of kept it going. and that relationship ended. He ended up finding somebody else, um, and cheating and doing all that stuff. Broke up with me in an email. That was fantastic. And then I got into a relationship with an even bigger drinker. And I didn't have to hide at all. Like, if I wanted to get sloppy fall down, like, we could get sloppy fall down. And what I didn't realize is, as my drinking was progressing, I was definitely more depressed. I would cry, so I would cry on my way home from work because I knew that I was going to stop at the liquor store because I knew I was out of wine. And it was like being out of my body. Like, I would pull into the parking lot and I'm like, don't you go in. And next thing you know, like, doors opening, I'm going out. Like, I'm walking up to the counter with a box of wine and I'm like, don't fucking buy it, And then I'm at the counter handing them my debit card, like, thank you. And I'm walking outside and I'm like, don't you pour that first glass. And like, there I am, like, turning that little nozzle or pushing down whatever plunger in the wine. And then I'm like, don't you drink that. And it's like, I had no, do you know what I mean?
I do. I know exactly what you mean. I know exactly what you mean.
It's like a total out of body experience. You're like, what do I do right now? It's nice to know that you know that.
Well, yes, I have done it with alcohol. And then after I got sober, I've done it with food. I still go through. I'm still dealing with my own eating disorders and body dysmorphia and all of that fun stuff. But I still do it with things. I'm a little bit better. So it's kind of like I'm hyper self-aware about these things. It was with drinking and it was with food, but I was also completely unable to change what I was doing. And when those thoughts, they'll start first thing in the morning, even if the action that I'm going to take for the alcohol or whatever the substance is doesn't happen until 5 or 6 or even like 11 o'clock at night. I'm already planning a day, sometimes 12 hours in advance. I'm having little thoughts about where I'm going to be. And you talk about like pulling into the parking lot and I'm like, well, I wonder if my favorite parking spot is open, or just weird thoughts like that, because it's all about that little routine about where I'm going to be and how I'm going to get there, and then I'm going to get home, and which corner of the counter is my box of wine going to be on, or right. So you're just and I think in a lot of ways, and we'll talk about this in a bit, but when athletes go and they train for things, they mentally go and they do the thing over and over and over and over, whether it's swimming the laps or doing the long jump or whatever it is. And I feel like there's a lot of that repetition, hyper self-awareness, and just that obsession, right? Like of every step of the way. It's not just drinking and getting drunk. It's everything up to it.
It's the routine.
It's the routine that's so exciting, and or can be so exciting, or it can be very, like you said, you're crying the whole way through because I don't want to be here anymore and I can't help it and I don't know how to get out. So yes. I understand.
I know, like, you literally like saying yes. I feel like so much lighter because somebody gets it. Like, because the food thing, I've become a monster with sugar. I wake up thinking about carrot cake. Like I put on, in my first year of sobriety, I put on like 20 pounds, like that, and I probably would have put on more if I wasn't running, honestly.
Right.
Oh man, it was tough, but cool. So you get it.
I do, very much so. Very, very much so. So you're in this relationship with somebody who's even a bigger alcoholic or a bigger drunk than you are. So at least then I feel like sometimes too, we're able to justify our behaviors. You're like, well, I'm not as bad as that person. And so from that relationship to the final drink, what's that period like?
So what happened for me, the thing that changed me, and I mean, is it okay if I mention another podcast? Well,
You can say whatever you'd like. How you can speak however you'd like. Yes.
Okay. So I literally had one of those moments where I was crying. The job that I had at the time gave me the opportunity to do a lot of driving, and I love driving. So that's when I think. If I really need to think something out, I get in the car, and for me, I live really close to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, so I'll drive the 30 minutes to Gettysburg and just drive through, and like it's just my like, you know. So so anyway, so I'm driving and I'm thinking, and I'm like, there's like I had spent time up to this point Googling, am I an alcoholic? What is an alcoholic? Like you start doing research, right? So I didn't know yet about podcasts. Like this was a whole new thing. This is like November 2017 time frame. And I so I got a new iPhone. I'm like, oh, what's this purple button? And I'm like, oh, podcast. I'm like, oh shit, TED Talks. Like I've heard of that. I'm like, oh shit. And then I found the TED Talks where basically the opposite of addiction is connection. He talks about a different approach to treatment. I think so. I hear that and I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. So then I put into the podcast search thing and I put in alcoholic. So the next thing that popped up was after that amazing podcast was Recovery Elevator. And this guy, Paul Churchill. And I listened to this podcast and I don't remember what episode it was, but it was like the very beginning of the program. And it just was like firing on all cylinders. Me too. Holy shit. Me too. Like, what? And then I binge listened. I was in the car for an 8-hour day for my work. I was at the time a property manager, so I was just inspecting properties, had headphones in, listening to this. Like, I think I went through 100 episodes in like probably a month. Damn. Just like nonstop, and all of a sudden I was like, I found my home. Like I found this group of people that understand, and I kept listening and I kept saying to the person I was with at the time, like, I want to try to get sober. Like, this is something I really want to do. And he was so unsupportive. It was atrocious. And a lot of that I realize now through my own recovery was a lot of his self-reflection shit. But got out of that relationship, bought my own house, managed to do that while still actively drinking in the worst depression of my entire life, at like the pit of despair of depression. This person I was with was not just an alcoholic. He was a narcissist sociopath, and it was just the abuse, the mental trauma that I went through with that guy was a whole nother level. So when I got out of that, I felt like this big, like teeny weeny weeny, like I was like, I'm shit, and the only way to make myself not is to get sober and to live my life the way that I've always wanted to live it. And I can't do that. I can't go hiking every weekend. I can't run half marathons. I can't do a marathon. I can't be a trail runner. I can't be a triathlete. Like I can't be all these things if I'm drinking a gallon of wine a day. Like, I can't fucking do it. So I dove in. I signed up. They have a Facebook group. I signed up for the Facebook group. I went all in, and I was like, I'm doing this. The group was amazing. Like that hug that I hear people get from AA and other 12-step programs, I got that kind of a hug there that just was like, I'm home. Like this is my safe place, and I had tried AA, but I never. I'm not like, if I'm going to talk about my feelings, it's going to be private, or I'm going to be so verbal about it that it's my choice to tell my story. I really struggle in those like group scenarios. I really do. I have a ton of anxiety, and this is a place where I didn't have to be a stranger because I could just be that little spy looking at everyone's posts and reading all the comments, Anyway, so I finally got sober. It was June of 2018 at the time, and I had it all planned out, right? Like when I got to 30 days, I was going to be on a camping trip, and I was going to like celebrate at the campground, like my first sober adventure. And unfortunately, I got to day 30. I made it through day 30, and I was driving around. I was in South Carolina, right outside of Charlotte, at this lake called Lake Norman. And there were just all these like marinas and all these little tiki bars everywhere and that whole boat vibe. And I felt left out. And that FOMO kicked in. And I sat at a bar and I ordered a thing of chicken wings, and because I love wings, and that goes great with an IPA. And I started drinking again, and I
Yeah.
drank the whole rest of that vacation. It was depressing. It was sad. I was by myself, drinking by myself, supposed to be celebrating my, sobriety, going hiking. I wanted to get all these miles in, I'm like, oh, I'm going to be active vacation. And I'm just sitting at the bar drinking again. So I left. I came home from vacation early, unpacked my campsite, came home. I was like, Tiff, go home and get sober again. Like, you were fine when you were home. You didn't have all those temptations. Go home and get sober. So that's what I did. I went home, I adopted a cat, and I got sober. And it's just kind of stuck ever since. I had that comparison of like a really awesome 30 days, and I was really feeling good about myself. And then I drank, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard that from other people too who have, I wouldn't really, going, it's not really, I wouldn't really call it a relapse, is because I think in those beginning periods, it becomes about experimentation, because you're new to it. You don't know what
Mm-hmm.
works, and you're like, okay, 30 days. And then you go, well, I guess I'm fine. Maybe I am. Maybe a beer sounds good. And then you go, oh, that didn't work at all. That was awful. That ruined everything. And so you
Mm-hmm.
step away from that, hopefully, thankfully, and you're able to say, you
Yeah.
know what, that doesn't work. And I didn't fall back into it, and I wasn't able. Some people do fall back into it, and never able to come out of it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I feel like it's more experimentation at that point than it is relapse. And not that I would suggest anyone experiment. Um,
No.
I'm
No.
always grateful to hear about somebody else's, not, at their expense necessarily. But I think that
Yeah.
as much as I know as an alcoholic, it is difficult for me to learn the easy way. Listening to other
Mm-hmm.
people has been helpful. Um,
Yeah.
can you talk a little bit about your program of recovery? Because you mentioned AA didn't work for you, didn't jive with you, and I completely understand that, because I was in it kicking and screaming for months until something
Mm-hmm.
just clicked with me, and I just found the right person to talk to. But it's not
Yeah.
for everybody. But can you talk a little bit about your program?
Yeah. I mean, so when I got sober, I was very sad. Yeah, there were moments where I thought about like that, just like taking my own life. It's like, it's just, this sucks. This isn't happy. So when I got sober, I realized the reoccurring theme was like, I just wanted joy. Like, I just wanted everything in my life to be joyful. Like, I want to be happy. I want to feel emotions again, because I felt just so dead. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel excited. Like, I just was very like gray. Everything was a cloudy day. And
Mm-hmm.
so I kind of thought about that, and I was like, what does that look like to me? Like, what does bringing joy to my life look like? And I was like, well, honestly, like, it would be great if I had less anxiety. It'd be great if my anxiety would just like simmer down for a hot moment so I can focus. And I realized as I got sober, like, I had some really hard pause symptoms for a little while, but I realized as I got sober and my anxiety levels started to go down, that like I actually wasn't as like crazy as I thought I was. Like, this was really a lot of alcohol induced like stressors. Um I'm sorry, I did forget your main question though. I'm trying to
Well,
bring it
my
back,
main
and I
question was just
remember my
describe
program.
your program. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So when I started figuring that out, I was like, okay, like, my anxiety's coming down. Like, this is kind of cool. Like, what else is gonna happen? So I started doing a lot of reading, and learning about pause symptoms, for example. It was really important for me to learn about that, because I had done such damage to my brain, and there were days when like I would be at work doing a simple task, like literally filing, like stuffing envelopes, and I'm like, this is difficult. Like, this is really strangely difficult today. And basic cognitive memory was, and I was like, what the hell? Like, I am taking crazy pills. But as I really started to research and learn more, like that was where my recovery really started to take a big change. And it wasn't so much about just simply staying sober, but my recovery and my program was, how do I make myself better? Like, how do I make myself the best version of myself that I can? So, I started just continuously educating myself, being as active and open about my recovery as I could, telling my story without any fear, like no anonymity. Like, you want to hear my story? Like, I'm an open book, and through that process, I've helped, quite a few people start their own recovery journey. And so my recovery, like I always say, is like my recovery is helping people, because like every time I'm more and more honest and open about it, like I've had family members reach out. I've had friends from high school that I haven't seen or talked to in 20 years reach out. And, I've had people that I failed with, or ironically, one guy was just a contractor on a boat that I worked on, and he reached out to me like, hey, we met a couple of years ago. Remember? Like, oh, I see you're on Facebook and you're talking about recovery. Like, I'm struggling. And I'm like, what do you need? Like, it's just it's really been cool letting my recovery be service work, as much as I can. And
that's a big tenet of probably every single program of recovery. I mean, in AA, service is huge, but it seems to me to be the one thing that gets me out of that crazy alcoholic, thoughts of sadness and despair. Is like, oh, well, let me go help somebody else. And then I can always kind of like take myself out of here, which is where all of the craziness lives for me. And,
yeah,
but like,
but that can backfire though. Like, you got
tell
to be
me.
careful with that, because if you dive into your service work, right? So one of the most important things that I learned, and I'm not trying to like pass judgment or anything, but one of the most important things that I learned was that you have to sit with your shit, like you have to. So sure, like diving into that service work is great, but like you have to make sure that, because you can't help people if you're not good.
Right.
It's kind of like, like I find I'm more argumentative with people when I've got my own crap going on in my head, whether I mean to be or not, or I'm more judgy. Like my boyfriend would be like, why are you on me about this? And I'm like, oh, because that's actually me feeling that way. Like, so that's my only little caution tale with
Sure.
that, is just make sure that you are good before you step out and help other people.
100%. And I don't think that, I think service in early recovery is good to keep it was good to keep me busy so that I didn't
Yeah.
feel like I had time to hang out and think about drinking. But I completely agree with you that sitting with your own shit, dealing with your own resentments, and trying to um understand what is making me, whether it's anxious or angry or sad or depressed or even suicidal. These thoughts do come from somewhere. And I've found most of them come from my childhood, and most of them come from my father. And so that's something that I continually, daily deal with, because,
Yeah.
and not deal with in such a, not in an oppressive way, right? But
Yeah.
I try to be constructive about it and go, oh, that's something that I remember my dad used to say that to me. He doesn't say that
Yeah.
anymore. I don't need to hear that anymore. I don't need to listen to that. I can let that one go, so constructively dealing with it, as well as, not just being burdened with it all the time.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so one thing I hear you say is you talk about going on hikes when you were drinking, and I was never very active
Okay.
physically in 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 my active alcoholism. It wasn't until I got sober and only several years into it that I found running. So
Okay.
yeah, and also I'm 44, and which is not old, but also I'm not, I have never trained as an athlete. So you sound like you've been active for most of your life. that you have.
Yeah.
And so maybe finding a routine for, and you talked about that being one of the motivations for getting sober, was wanting to run a half marathon, wanting to trail run, wanting to run a marathon. um can you talk a little bit about how running has helped you in your
Yeah.
recovery?
Yeah, absolutely. When I first heard that word, like, she's an alcoholic back in 2014, that's when I like started deciding that I was going to focus on my health, because at the time it was like, well, I'm going to prove you wrong. Like, I can do this and that.
Hmm.
And as that developed, like, I started running shortly after that. So that was like November 13. Like, by the spring of 2014, I was running pretty regularly. Um, and it sucked. It hurt so bad at first. Like, I didn't get started until I was in my 30s as well. So, was I really? No, I was younger. I was in my late 20s then. But so, it hurt, and my lungs were like, "What the hell are you doing?" And I smoked until I was 27. So, that didn't
Yeah.
help. Um, and so, for me, it was something to do. It was something to fill that time space. I'm a morning anxious person, so if I don't deal with my anxiety first thing in the morning, it carries on too far into my day, and it really does quite derail me. So I really need to wake up and be active, like, first thing. Like, my boyfriend now thinks I'm nuts. Like, I get up at 4:30 every day. Like, I'm just, that's what I do.
Yeah.
But so running for me in recovery, like, it gives me that time. I have high anxiety, so I don't sit still well. I don't meditate. Like, I really try. Like, I do yoga, and I really, really genuinely try to, like, turn this brain off, but it doesn't shut off. So for me, running is that. The longest run I've ever been able to do has been a half marathon. My goal was
Hmm.
to do that by the time I was 35 years old, and I did accomplish that goal. Um, and through, like, the signing up for all the half marathons, and, like, you know canceling it because I got scared, like, that whole process of training has
Hmm.
taught me so much about how strong I really am. Something that my recovery has definitely highlighted is that I can do hard things. um, you know I did really well up until I did my half marathon. Running was, it was a, what do you call it, a non-negotiable. It
Hmm.
was just, this is, you need to figure out how to fit into my day, because my day is, I'm driving an hour to go to this trail to do a long run, and then I'm coming back home. Like, you
Yeah.
figure out how you meet up with me.
Yeah.
um, and it stopped being like that. And I'm coming out of it. I've been really struggling with my recovery in my second year. My hardest challenge has absolutely been food. I've really been diving into sugar and my bad eating habits, and I'm crawling out of that hole now. And so I really feel like this spring is going to be awesome. It doesn't help that I live in Maryland and the weather here just sucks in the wintertime for months and months and months. um, but running, if it wasn't for running, I probably wouldn't have made it through my first year. I really can honestly say that. It
Yeah.
gave me so much time. And when I got my long runs up to where I could, like, run for an hour, like, no problem, and you just got the beat, and you've got that music and it's just right, and you're just like, oh man, like, I kind of don't want to stop, but, like, it
No.
hurts now. you know
I have hurt myself because it was like, well, you've done 8. Why are you going to stop? Just go 10. And then
yeah.
by the time I get home, it's almost 11 miles and I'm like wiped out for the rest of the day, like
Yeah.
done, like I'm just ready for bed and it's 3 in the
Uh-huh.
afternoon or whatever. So yes, I completely
Yeah.
understand when you find that flow. And I
Yeah.
wonder if, for me, and one of the things that really like cracked something open in my head was the running, is I found it was a place where I would have those moments of freedom, of relief, of release, and I would just start crying, like
Ooh,
out of
yeah.
nowhere. Something, sometimes
Yeah.
maybe it would be a verse in a song, or it would have been, I just got the right pace and I would just start
Mhm.
crying. And
Mhm.
and I would just keep going, and I would be crying while I was running. And so that became something that I looked forward to. And, you
Yeah.
know, like, oh, yes, that's what I need. And so over this last year, with everything that has happened, not just there's been multiple things. Injuries have happened, not just the pandemic. We had wildfires here and the smoke was really bad for a while. And then there were more injuries and other personal things that happened. And like you said, I fell out of it.
Hmm.
It was stopped being a non-negotiable because for
Yeah.
18 months it was non-negotiable. And I went out there every single day, if only for 2 miles. That's what I did. And it just disappeared. Well, I mean, also you hurt your back and you can't move. It's very difficult to make it right. So then
Yeah.
I start looking for comfort in other things. And what has always comforted me in the past in my sobriety? Sugar,
Ah,
candy,
that big old
chocolate,
hug of
cake.
sugar.
Yeah, the big old hug. Yes, yes. So I I I think the thing that I'm learning, and I wonder if you feel the same way, is I'm starting to look at my life as a little bit bigger and a little bit longer. And maybe these are just cycles and things are going to change. And like, it's okay that I gained 20 pounds over the last year because I know how to take it off because I did that before. So maybe I just need to restructure things and, listen to my body. And maybe I need to, there's all these other things that I need to do as far as training, right? Like, are my legs as strong as they can be? Are my knees as strong? What about my ankles? How's my
Yeah.
flexibility? How's my mobility? But I just want to run. And that was my problem too, that I wouldn't do any of the other stuff. I wouldn't lift a weight. I wouldn't stretch a leg. I would just go run because I thought that was the only thing that was going to help me. And then I'm like,
Yeah.
oh shit, it's more than that. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. It's the whole package. It's the whole package. I do, and I had a lot more injuries when I wasn't incorporating. I mean, even just like a 10-minute yoga routine after a
Mhm.
run, like just like that basic like strength training, like okay, there's something to it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
like but you're right, if life was happier and more manageable when I was leaning into the benefits of physical fitness versus the benefits I think I get from things like sugar and bread, and
Mhm.
like and Cadbury cream eggs and York
Yeah.
peppermint patties.
Mhm.
It's just yeah, I get it though. And with the whole food thing in recovery is when I first got into it, I think I single-handedly funded my local Dairy Queen. Like I Oreo Blizzard, extra Oreos, like
Yeah.
every night,
Yeah.
and I always justified it at first because I was like, whatever, like it's not a box of wine, it's not a beer, I'm not taking shots of vodka, like I can eat ice cream every night because I drank a gallon of wine every night. Like I know
Yeah.
I can do this. And it's not better and all that, but I was like, whatever, like I'm not drinking. And now I feel like, okay, I'm sneaking up on year 3, one day at a time, and I'm like, I'm seeing that now, like, okay, it's not just about satisfying that craving. Like, you have that whole, like, you had a stressful day. What's your reward? Like, I don't want my reward to be sitting down and eating a thing of ice cream. I want it to be like, what? Like, go home, put your running shoes on, go run through that sunset that's over there because it's beautiful and you
Yeah.
can. You know,
Yeah.
that's that's the shift that I see happening slowly, and like the more the days get longer and the snow's starting to melt, and I'm like, all right, like I just cannot wait to get back outside.
Right. And I don't have the same adverse weather issues, living in Northern California, but
Yeah.
I completely understand. I mean, our winters are nothing. I'm not complaining in the slightest, but I do understand that the weather can put a damper on the running and being outside, regardless of how much gear you have. My mother would always say, there's no bad weather, John, just bad clothes. And I'm like, Mom, you don't understand when it's cold out there and I don't want to get out of bed. And you're like, maybe the sun will come out later this afternoon and I can go. And so, yeah, I just,
Yeah.
I found it so integral to, I'm going on 5, 6 years now, to the
Hmm.
recovery process. And
Yeah.
so I feel so much better. And all those things that I was looking for with alcohol, wanting to feel, like you said, joy, wanting to feel comfortable, wanting to feel relaxed, wanting to feel
Yeah.
happy. I'm like, I'm finding them by running.
By taking care of yourself.
Yes.
you're
Yes.
you're putting yourself first, right? Like, you feel that because why? Because you're doing this work for you. And like, kind of back to the service work thing, like,
Mm-hmm.
you have to be careful, because it's like not just taking care of yourself with like the mental focus on like stressors and whatever, like you're like, eat right, like, sure, have cake, like, I'm not saying don't ever, but like, eat right and fuel your body, like, eat mindfully. And like,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't have time to go for a run, like, take 30 minutes and do some stretches while you're watching TV. Like, do
Yeah.
something for yourself. There's a benefit to 20 push-ups and 20 squats every day. Like, I saw this statistic. So I saw, and it scared the hell out of me. And it was that one of the hot 60% of people over the age of 85 that are admitted to nursing homes are admitted because they cannot perform a half rep of a body weight squat. And what that means is they can't physically get off the toilet without help. So they have to go into these assisted living places because they can't get off the toilet. They can't get out of a chair. Like, that statistic terrified me. And I was like, I need to take care. I'm 36. Like, I need to take care of myself because I need this body to live this long life that recovery is giving me. Like, recovery is giving me the ability to, instead of being like, oh shit, I got to do this every day for the next 80 years, to be like, sweet, I get to do this every day. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's a total mind shift. I love it.
Man, you just gave me a new perspective on getting my squats done. Because I
Right?
hadn't thought about that. And I'm like, oh, it's really no, 20, and I'm like, you need to bring it up a little bit, John. You should probably be doing 30 or 40. And it's like, I don't know. And last year I did this whole thing I did, 100 push-ups every single day for a month, and it was
Good
awesome
for
and it
you.
was great. Yeah, we did this whole what do you like, a social media challenge. And it felt really good. It felt really, really good. And I was hyper focused on that, and it became my non-negotiable for that month. Later I
Mm-hmm.
found out I was doing the squats all wrong, and that's when I hurt my back, and then I was out for 2 weeks, and then the sky was covered in smoke, and so there was absolutely no activity for almost the entire month of August. But
Yeah.
you make a good point about, like, just doing those things because it's this long life that we are being given to live in
Mm-hmm.
recovery, not because I have to do my push-ups, not because I should, but because I get to. And that's a big shift too. I get to do this, or I don't have to drink. I get to
Mm-hmm.
be sober.
Yeah.
um I love it. I love it. I mean, it's become so important to me. And even if I've fallen a little bit in the last year, it's going to happen, right? I mean, things are going to be, there were lots of things that are beyond my control. Um,
Okay, 2020 was a whole different story. So like, give yourself a pat on the back,
right,
and like,
right,
you see, we're in 2021, babe. Like, you
right,
made it.
right, right. And I said that to somebody else or something. I was lamenting, right? And they were like, John, so you gained a little bit of weight in 2020, join the club. It's fine, And I was like, oh, okay. Like, because in my own head, I'm like, oh God, I've just done so horrible. And it's like, and you're right. Like, we all made it. And it was rough for everybody, regardless of where you were at and what you were dealing with. It was extraordinarily trying for everybody. So yes, I appreciate that. And thank you. Do you have is there a spiritual aspect to your program at all? Because it's always been something that's been very vague for me. I didn't grow up with anything, and I've had to do my best to try and put it together myself. And so I'm always curious how other people come to find it.
Yeah, so I struggle with it. I don't, part of the AA struggle for me was the whole God thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
admitting to God and all, and I'm like, I don't like believing. And I went to Catholic school. I went to Sunday school. I got confirmed. I did all the stuff. But I have trouble feeling like there's just like this one end all be all opinion of something. I
Mm-hmm.
really I like that I can step outside, and when I see a beautiful sunset or sunrise or scenery, I'm like, yeah, like you feel the higher power, like
Yes.
you're just like this is way beyond anything that I can comprehend. So like I
Yes.
believe that there's just bigger stuff out there, but I don't really think it's really confined to one specific religion. And then I don't think that religion is wrong or anything. Like everyone, believe in a tree if you want to believe in a tree, like, but it's just for me, like one of the most spiritual moments I ever had in my recovery, I'll share with you, is before I got sober. I was in San Juan Capistrano visiting my sister. She lives in SoCal, and we were at the mission there,
Mm-hmm.
and I was standing where the original mission, the church was that had collapsed and killed everyone inside, and just the being there and feeling like kind of like I think that's kind of why I'm attached to Gettysburg, is there's like just like a lot of lives attached there. It's a very spiritual place because there's spiritual stuff there, like a lot of people died, there's a lot of energy. So like kind of like there, I felt it. And then when I went into the chapel that they built after, like the whole community came together and everything, and built this new church, and you just see like the love and the ornate detail that went into this place. Have you ever been there?
No. Well, not that I remember. No, it was a very long time ago.
Oh God, it's like the gold like displays, behind the altar, just the amount of immaculate detail that went into this place. And have your opinion about what missions did and all that, whatever. But it's just like I stood in there and I started crying, and I was with my sister and my brother, and it was my brother's first time like in Cali, so we were trying to give him like a good experience, and like he doesn't really travel much. And I was like trying to hide that I'm crying because my brother and sister don't know that like inside I'm dying because I'm still an alcoholic, active in my addiction, and I'm like really trying to find myself. So at that mission, let me see if I can find it in my purse. I got this
Mm-hmm.
coin.
Okay.
This is it's Mother Perpetual Help, and it's just it literally, I don't know if you can see it, but it says Perpetual Help on it.
Mm-hmm.
And on the back of it, it has a little prayer. So this is this coin that I got in San Juan Capistrano. This is my spirituality and my recovery. And this is as far as I take it with the whole God thing. But it says, "Oh Mother, Perpetual Help, sweetest Mary, I ask you with," hold on, it's like that old language.
Mm-hmm.
"I ask you with your divine grace to watch over me. Give me the strength to take it one day at a time." So
Beautiful.
I bought this,
Yeah.
and I was like, this is so she's always with me in this little baggie in my purse.
And you bought that when you were still drinking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I was.
Wow.
Then I was. That was that trip. I was hiding alcohol from my sister. I would pour myself a glass of wine, chug it, pour another glass, and then go into a room. It was such a hard trip to hide. And I was like, I'm hiding it from my family. What the hell? That was a tough day.
Yeah. Yeah, I
But
we all did that weird little hiding thing. I used to love to cook and be in the kitchen when nobody else was because that's where the booze was, and I could always pour myself more without anybody knowing. And that was kind of
oh
my
yeah,
little way of hiding because I'd be like, well, they don't understand that I need more wine. They don't understand that I need to drink straight from the bottle while I'm at the stove while everybody else is in the other room, and all these weird
yeah,
little just
yeah,
justifications for my alcoholic behavior. No,
yeah.
I think that's beautiful, and I don't think that spirituality has to come from anywhere. I had a very difficult time with it as well, and um I've said this before on the podcast, and I think it bears repeating. For me, the thing that I learned through all of this is that, like, the word God, and when you see it, and that really rubs people the wrong way for a lot of different reasons. And I think many of them are wholly justified. And, but what I found was that it's a metaphor, because I can't explain the sunset, right? I can feel it and I can experience it. And so there's this metaphor. And when it was described to me like that, it took all of the negative power that the word had away. And I was like, oh, so it's just a placeholder. It's just a word that me and somebody else are using to have a conversation about something that neither of us fully understand. And I was like, oh, okay. I think I can get next to this. And you don't care what I pick and choose? Oh, okay. All right. And so, for you to find this coin and to have this moment, and, to understand that something that was important, right? That
Oh
that was
yeah.
is beautiful.
It was it was literally like the most spiritual experience I have ever had in my life. And I have been in a ton of churches. My Nana's Roman Catholic. Like, if it's a holiday and she's in town, you're going to church, you know? If
Hmm.
it's not a holiday and she's in town, you're going to church. It could be a Tuesday in the middle of March and you're going to church, you know? Love her, but it was, out of all the places I've ever sat in, that was the moment I needed, you know?
Cool. I have a couple more questions, and then I'll
Okay.
let you go. I appreciate your time. Is there anything that you are currently, like, what are you currently struggling with in your sobriety, in your recovery? What is your struggle today?
Yeah, so one of the reasons that I really liked and got involved with the recovery group that I'm in through Recovery Elevator is because we had a lot of sober travel meetups,
Hmm.
and I really am missing that, like, sober travel interaction. They put together some really great trips, and I didn't get to participate in as many as I wanted to, and then COVID happened, and then we couldn't have any. I just miss people, because I don't go to AA locally. It really does
Hmm.
limit my sobriety network. But
Hmm.
through this recovery group, there are people in our area, so the biggest thing I'm struggling is the feeling of isolation, and feeling like I'm missing out, not like FOMO stuff, but like I'm missing people. Like, I just want to, like, eat pizza at a table with a group of people, like,
Yeah.
ah,
Yeah.
and because of that, my lean in since I was a little kid was always food. So I really leaned into food really hard recently, and I'm coming out of that. So I'm my biggest struggle at the moment is re kickstarting that drive to be like, no, like, you're not getting home and sitting on the couch with a bag of potato chips. You're getting home and you're putting your running shoes on and you're taking the dog for a walk, because you're not in shape enough to run yet, but you need to get out there and move, you know. And the
Yeah.
weather just sucks, like I said. So
Yeah.
I really just, I cannot wait for the days to get longer and I can start a
Amen.
routine.
Yes. Yes.
I can't wait.
I'm with you 100%. I mean, I work nights, so it kind of shift. Like, I went through a period, you said about waking up at 4:30 in the morning. I would get up
Yeah, still
for a
that.
period after I quit one job and I had some time off and I had some money saved, and I was getting up at 5:30 every morning, and it felt
Uh-huh.
good. It felt really
Yeah.
good. And working nights, that is just not, I can't get enough sleep. It's impossible. So waking up at 8:30 or 9 is just the way that it is right now for the time being. But
Right.
but I lost my train of thought. But I the running and getting back into it, and I love the term my non-negotiable. And what will be
Mm-hmm.
my non-negotiable as the days get extended and I have more time, and I have more time in the morning, and what's going
Yeah.
to be the non-negotiable. um
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a really beautiful way to put it, and I really like that, and I'm going to use that. And then my final question is just, if there's, it's not really a question, but for anybody listening who's having difficulty, what would be your one piece of advice for somebody who's drinking and wants to quit, or somebody who's in recovery and wants to drink?
So, okay, so for someone who wants to quit, and somebody who's in recovery wants to drink, just go back to the part about the joy. Like in recovery, I have like back up a little bit. I used to look at sober pages on Instagram and be like, bullshit. Like, you're not that happy. Like, you're such a fucking hypocrite. Like, you go home and kick your cat. Like I used to be like, there is no way that you just get sober and all of a sudden you're happy.
Hmm.
Yeah, okay, but you do. Like you get sober and you work on yourself and you look hard at yourself in the mirror, and it only continues to get better. And if you really want all those things out of life that you roll through your head, I want the good job, I want to make more money, I want to live here, I want to do this. You can do that if you just take care of yourself. Like you can. Everything is possible. You want to learn a language? Guess what? You have all this free time now that you're sober to learn a language. You want to start
Hmm.
running? Guess what? Just by not drinking, I've been able to get 6 hours back from every one of my days. 6 hours is a lot of time.
Yeah.
So, my advice to anybody that's thinking about either A, going back out, or B, quitting, just remember the point of life. Why do you want to live? What is your goal out of life? And I guarantee you that alcohol is not going to help you get there in any way, shape, or form. Promise you that. That's my
Amen.
thought.
Yes. 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 Where, so, and I have more questions about the running. Honestly, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but so you did a half marathon.
I did. Yeah. Yeah,
You've
I did.
done, and how was it?
Okay, so talk about ugly crying at the finish line. I like ran through like ugly crying. I was so proud of myself. Holy is it? It was the Baltimore Running Festival.
Hmm.
Have you ever been to Baltimore?
I've never been there. No.
So they have you run all through the city, and
Hmm.
it's funny as a sober person because no joke, there's people that run this and drink the entire time. And because you're running through the city, so you're running through everyone's neighborhood, right? So people have like tables with like those little Dixie cups you get at like the dentist office, but they're all like
Hmm.
shots of beer. And like the local beer around here is National Bohemian Natty Boh. So like you can take shots of Natty Boh like as you're running. There's like Bloody Mary stands. Like it's that kind of a running festival. The whole city, there's drag queens in the street. It's phenomenal. So the energy is just like so up, and everyone's participating, and there's people like with signs like sorry you're not there yet. Like so the energy like just gets you pumped, and like you run through some kind of sketchy areas. You run around, but it's fine when you get to that finish line. And it's like, because it's such a big festival, there's just all these people like screaming your name. They don't even know who you are. The announcer says your name because he can see your bib, and you go
Hmm.
across that finish line. Like all of a sudden, you're not exhausted. Your knees don't hurt. Your ankles don't hurt. Your shins aren't on fire. You're just like, I ugly cried. Like you would have thought I just like solved world hunger. I was like, oh my god. It was the best feeling in the world, and that's why I do it. Like I love trail running. I
Me
just
too.
started getting into that. Good. I just started getting into that when I started training for the half marathon, because I had the theory. I was like, okay, well, I can run 6 really hard miles on a side of a mountain. Like I can do a half marathon on a flat street.
Hmm.
Like so it was really a great training tool. So I've done a couple 10Ks and I've done some half marathons. I haven't done anything longer than a half marathon yet.
Hmm.
So it would be wonderful to sign up. We'll see what happens with the whole, COVID world. But if the Baltimore Running Festival is doing it again this year, I would like to kind of make that an end goal, because it's towards the middle of October. So like there's
Yeah.
plenty of time to train, and
Yeah.
hopefully things open up by then, but we'll see.
Yeah, when I did my one and only half marathon in 2019, I cannot believe now when I look back how horribly unprepared I was, and I still did it, you know? So I think
Yeah.
that's something that I like to think about when I went out the other day, a couple weeks ago, and just did 10 miles because I
Yeah.
wanted to. And
Yeah.
then to think about how much pain I was in the first, well, I was having some issues with my foot. So like in the first 3 miles, I'm already like, oh no, there's pain already. Like I'm in trouble here and I got to do this for another 10 miles. And it was at night and it was in the desert. So like in sand in Joshua Tree. And I was talking to other people there and they're like, this is your first? This is real. This is not an easy one to do. And I was like, oh no, what did I sign up for? Because it wasn't flat pavement. Um, but that's been a good tool for me to go, John, you were so unprepared and you just did it because you wanted to do it and you made
Hmm.
it happen. And so I'm constantly having to go back to those things. You know what else is I just didn't know any better. And I think that
Yeah.
was a really, and now I'm like second guessing thing and I'm reading too much about running and about my form and worried about this and worried about that and not wanting to hurt myself and oh, how are my ankles doing and how are my knees doing and
Yeah.
overthinking everything.
But fear of injury is a real thing. But you also know that you can prevent injury by doing basic exercises on the side, right? So like
Right.
that's where you go back. Your squats are important, like just a little gentle reminder,
Yes.
But the base, like back to basics.
No, I
And
think you've got me on the squats. You have convinced me that it's like a non-negotiable now every day. It's important.
good. Yeah, it is.
Man.
It is. Have you ever heard of David Goggins?
Oh yes, yes.
Okay.
He's a bit of a masochist, but yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So I don't really have time to like read because I'm in school and I drive a lot, but so I got the ebook His Can't Hurt Me. Have you
Hmm.
read that or heard it?
I haven't finished it. I'm partway through. He does it with he has interviews with the guy who helped him write it. Is that correct in the middle of
Mhm.
it? Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, it's so the version of it is phenomenal because not only do
Hmm.
they narrate it, but then they've got like the commentary. I love it. I love it. But he talks about coming to a race totally underprepared, and it's a phenomenal story. So make sure you get
Hmm.
there. You'll be
Yes.
like, oh,
Oh wait. Oh, is that the I might have oh yeah. Well, there's been a
when he
few.
did his
I
first.
he like
It was
breaks
when he
both of
did
his
his first
shins or
one.
something like that.
Say that again.
He like breaks his shins or something like that, wraps him up and runs, or no, that
Well,
was
that
another
was
one.
part of when he was in the military running on
Okay.
broken bones. But this is when he was trying to be a recruiter and he started getting into
Mm-hmm.
the ultra running.
Mm-hmm.
And he did his first ultra. That's the one.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So it's just, but I love that notion that you can be unprepared and be and not
Yeah,
know and be able to
yeah.
go further than
That's
if.
the thing, your mind is so powerful. Your mind, like
Mm,
if you tell yourself you can't do something, you're not gonna do it.
yeah.
Just like, but except for when it comes to sugar. If I tell myself I'm not gonna eat sugar, I'm gonna eat sugar. I don't know why that happens,
These
but it
do
does.
require some other tools that yes, we need. Yes, you are correct. I
Yeah.
agree. I agree.
But it's just like if you really want to do it, you just have to change your mindset so you can, and your mind can do so much more than your body thinks it can. Truthfully,
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I have I've shut out, I had another little epiphany where I was having some issues with I don't know if it's shin splints or not, but I was going through and I was like, "Man, I'm trying to get back into this running thing and I'm not even like a mile and a half in and everything is in so much pain." And I'm like, "Just move through it. You've moved through this before." And then somewhere around like mile 5, it was gone. And I was like,
yeah.
"Oh shit, where did it's gone?" But it hurt so bad. I was like, what
Hmm.
was that? And so ever since that day, I'm always like, well, okay, so stop and just walk through this and then move through it
Yeah.
and then go back to it and go back to it and go back to it because this is not the end. You're not going to feel this way forever. That's a hard thing to tell somebody when you're out there on the road and you're 8 miles down the road and you're like everything's in pain and you're like, well, you're not going to be in pain forever, but you're going to do 10 miles today. And lo and behold, I was able to do it. And so I love it. The
Yeah.
mind is a powerful thing.
The mind is, and as you're out there and while you're running and all those thoughts go through your head, it's okay to push yourself, just like it's okay to say, like, you know what, I'm good. Like I've hit my wall and done.
Yeah.
You don't have to prove. Like, the beautiful thing about running is I feel like people put so much pressure on themselves to have a certain time, a certain pace, to look a certain way. Like people drive by, you're all like, how do I look? And it's like I'm sweating and I hurt. I'm not going to be pretty. My face turns bright red. My chest turns bright red. I look like a freaking beast. Like. There's nothing attractive about me running at all, and I'm okay with that. And you know what? I'm sweating, and I smell, and you don't want to be anywhere near me. Like,
not at all.
Running is just meant to be what you make out of it. No pressure. Like, you're just out there, you're hitting the ground a couple of times over with your feet, and you decide when you start, and you decide when you stop. And everything in between is just what it is.
What kind of shoes do you wear?
Ooh, good question. So I am in love with the Pearl Azumis. I love. They have this running shoe that they stopped making, but I've been able to find it on Amazon, so I bought like 3 more pairs. And they're just like super, super comfy. But I just started getting into Sauconys. I ran my half marathon in a Saucony. And I liked it, but there's some details with the toes where I feel like I can kind of catch a toenail, But so I don't really care for Asics. My next purchase, though, I think I'm going to try those. Probably going to butcher it. Was it Hoka?
I think it's Hoka.
Hoka.
That's the one. That's the word I keep hearing.
Yeah, I think I'm going to try those next. What about you? What do you like?
I started with Merrell's. I did the Trail Glove 4, and I have a Trail Glove 5, and they worked amazing because they're super flat minimalist. So it really helped me learn how to land. But as I have been running further, and when I started to have issues with my ankles and, working on my form, I realized I needed a little more support. I've got some cheap generic whatever, I don't even know what they are, that I've been running in, and they've been working fine. But I think that what I'm going to require in the future is something with some more support now that I have the landing down. Because before I was doing the heel strike thing, that was my first business. So now I'm more midfoot. And now that I've learned that, now the trail glove Merrell's are great for running through the woods and stuff that I go. I always wear those, but I think the Hoka might be the next thing for me.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Last year I bought a pair of trail running shoes from Merrell, and then I didn't run. Maybe I'll finally bring bad boys in this.
They're great. I love them. I love them. Big, wide toe box, so you don't. There's plenty of room at the top. Tiffany, thank you so much. This was awesome. I really appreciate your openness to talk about sobriety, and I hope you get to run very soon and get back into whatever it is that you're looking for. If somebody wants to find you, where can they find you online?
Yeah, sure. So I have a little, I just call it a journal. It's my recovery journal. It's on Instagram. I'm only Forward Progress, and no hyphens or anything in between. So come on, find me. And, it's just basically a journal. I just talk about my mood. So nothing big.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you, John. Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. I'm glad we did this.
Thanks again for listening. Our music, as always, is by Neglect. You can find more of his stuff at neglect.bandcamp.com.
And you can find us on all social media platforms that matter: Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And you can reach us at aisforalcoholic@gmail.com.
Talk to you later.
Yeah.